What if I told you, the version of you you've been chasing isn't ahead of you, it's buried inside you, quietly waiting to be uncovered. You were never lost. You were just distracted by the noise. You keep waiting to feel ready. But what if readiness is a myth? What if everything you've been waiting for, confidence, clarity, courage, comes after the action, not before? The world doesn't need a louder version of you. It needs a truer one. And that journey begins, not with applause but in silence, in doubt, in the choices no one sees. We spend our lives chasing validation, comparing timelines, and waiting for the green light that never seems to come. But deep down, there's a quieter voice and knowing. A part of you that remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. This isn't about becoming someone new. This is about returning. Returning to strength, to clarity, to perspective. In this video, Mind of Stoic will guide you through a powerful journey that will change the way you see yourself forever. Not with loud declarations, but with quiet truths. Let's begin. Asterisk, there's a power within you, a fire that never truly dies. It may flicker when life gets heavy. It may grow dim in the darkest hours, but it's never gone. It waits, patiently, quietly, until one day, without warning, something sparks it again. A single moment, a challenge, a whisper of thoughts. Suddenly, that fire comes alive, and your soul remembers what it's made of. You might think you've already reached the edge of your potential, that you've explored the boundaries of your strength. But let me ask you, what if what you believe is only the surface? Beneath that surface lies an untapped ocean of force, a reservoir of ability you haven't even come close to accessing. There's something inside you that doesn't break, not really. It might grow quiet, it might feel far away, but it never disappears. That part of you, the one that kept moving when the world went dark, is still here, right now, waiting for you to remember. And the truth is, most people live their entire lives trapped beneath a version of themselves that only tells half the story. They wear the limitations they were given, never questioning if those limits were even real. But what if they weren't? What if all the doubt, fear, and failure you've faced weren't reflections of who you are, but tests, signals, meant to wake you up to the fire that's always been within? You think you know what you're made of. You haven't even scratched the surface. Because just beneath the noise of overthinking, of self-doubt and hesitation, there's a deeper you. One that is calm, focused, unshaken. That version of you isn't loud or flashy. It's grounded, real, steady. The kind of strength the Stoics lived by, not for show, but for truth. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And that's exactly where we're headed today. Not toward the superficial hype, but toward the real stuff. The kind of power that doesn't need to shout to be heard. And if there's even a small part of you ready to stop doubting and start becoming, then stay with me. This might be the spark that lights it all up again. Just one simple thing before we dive in. If this resonates with you, if you feel like this is a space you want to grow in, hit that subscribe button. It helps more than you know. So let me ask you something. Why do you think you doubt yourself? It's not because you're weak, not because you're broken. It's because somewhere along the way, you forgot just how much you've already carried, and how much you've already conquered silently, without fanfare, without applause. Self-doubt doesn't come from a lack of strength. It comes from disconnection, from losing touch with the part of you that keeps showing up. The part that gets out of bed when everything feels heavy, that smiles at others while silently carrying a weight no one sees. That part of you is still here, and it's stronger than you remember. But the world rarely teaches us to look for it. Most people never realize how powerful they already aren't, because that strength isn't there, but because they've been trained to overlook it. You weren't born unsure. You learned hesitation. Like a second language, it crept in through subtle messages to stay small, stay quiet, stay safe. Maybe it started at home, maybe at school, maybe watching someone else get punished for standing out. It's not your fault, but now, it is your responsibility to unlearn it. Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So ask yourself, what have you been repeatedly doing? Dismissing yourself, playing it safe, second-guessing your voice. Here's the truth. Beneath all the noise of doubt and hesitation, there's another voice, a quieter one. The one that whispers, "This isn't all I am. I was made for more than this." Have you ever sat in stillness and felt that voice rise? Not as ego, but as truth. Because if that voice has survived everything, the fear, the overthinking, the years you've tried to silence it, then so has the strength that carried you here. Through it all, you've endured far more than you realize. And now you remember those nights, don't you? The ones where a storm was raging inside your chest, sleepless, heavy, chaotic. And yet, you still showed up the next morning like the sky was clear. You put one foot in front of the other. You smiled. You carried on. That's not weakness. That's not pretending. That's resilience. That's grit. That's proof. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And the truth is you've been choosing, even in silence. Every small step, every quiet decision to keep going, has shaped who you are becoming. Your problem was never a lack of confidence. It was a lack of memory. Somewhere along the way, you forgot the mountain of evidence you've already built. You forgot how much strength lives in those ordinary, uncelebrated days, the ones where nothing made sense, yet you kept moving anyway. You adapted. You healed, piece by piece. You carried yourself through the chaos. That kind of strength doesn't just disappear. It doesn't vanish overnight. But it can be overlooked. And most of us ignore it because we've been conditioned to trust criticism more than capability. Think about it. How often do you downplay compliments, brush off achievements? Over time, a quiet story begins to form in the back of your mind. Maybe I'm not enough, even when your actions prove otherwise. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." But what about the unexamined self? That's where most suffering begins. Because if you never pause to look back and acknowledge all that you've overcome, how will you ever believe in what you can do next? There was a time you felt invincible, not because life was easy, but because you were in touch with something real. Maybe it was when you were a kid running wild, laughing loudly, speaking without apology. Or maybe it was during a hard chapter, when everything felt like it might fall apart. But something in you stood tall anyway. That wasn't ego. That wasn't arrogance. That was clarity. That was you. And that spark, it never died. It didn't burn out. It simply got buried under the weight of opinions you never asked for. The criticism you didn't deserve. The failures you mistook as definitions of your worth. Life gets loud. The noise, the pressure, the expectations, they blur your inner voice. But let's get one thing straight. You didn't lose your fire. You just stopped feeding it. And real fire, the kind that lives in your chest and refuses to quit. It doesn't die from one setback, or 10, or 1,000. It retreats, it smolders. It waits until the moment you choose to remember that it was never truly gone. It doesn't take a dramatic act to reignite it. Just a quiet, firm decision to believe again. Not in some perfect future version of you, but in the core that's always been there. Carl Jung said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart." Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. That sense of invincibility you once felt, that wasn't a dream, that was your heart speaking, before the world convinced you to doubt it. So maybe it's time to stop searching for validation out there, and start looking within for recognition. You're not starting from scratch, you're returning. You're not broken, you're buried under stories that were never yours to carry. Let them go. Reclaim that voice, the one that doesn't need to be loud to be certain. The one that whispers, "I'm not done, I'm just remembering." The loudest person in the room, rarely the strongest. Volume doesn't equal power. It often masks insecurity. The real kind of strength, it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't beg to be seen. It's too busy building. True confidence doesn't come from performing. It's not about proving something. It's about knowing something. And when you know, you don't need the world to clap. You just need to keep showing up every single day. When no one's watching, when no one's cheering, when it's just you and a work. That's where real power takes shape, Plato said. The measure of a man is what he does with power. But I would add, especially when no one's watching. Because the world will notice eventually. But the version of you who needs to notice first is you. You've been showing up without needing the spotlight, and that's where the real strength begins to form. So no one sees it yet. Good. Let them overlook you. Let them assume nothing's happening. Let your silence unsettle them. Let your discipline make them uncomfortable. Because one day when the results speak for themselves, they'll ask how you got there. But by then, your answer will already be written in your growth, in your actions, in your life. How many times have you told yourself, "I'll start when I'm ready"? Maybe you didn't speak it out loud, but you've thought it. That you need to feel more confident, more experienced, more prepared before taking that leap. But readiness, it doesn't knock on your door like a polite guest. It doesn't arrive with a fanfare, waving a flag that says, "Now's the time." Readiness is not something you wait for. It's something you build not by thinking about it, but by doing. You don't become ready and then act. You act, and through that, you become ready. Think of every person you admire, every story that's ever stirred something inside you. None of them began with certainty. They began with fear. They began with hesitation. They just didn't stop. They moved anyway. And in that movement, they became. Aristotle once said, "We learn by doing, not by waiting, not by doubting, but by stepping forward, especially into what terrifies us most." Fear wears many masks. One of its favorites is logic. It shows up sounding practical, mature, responsible. Just wait a little longer. Get more feedback first. You're not quite ready. But what if all that logic is just fear in disguise? What if it's not protecting you but paralyzing you? Because your future self, the grounded, capable version of you you've been waiting to become, that self isn't waiting for the perfect moment. It's calling you now, from the place where you feel most unsure. From right here. So if you're scared, good. That means you're alive. It means you're getting close to something that matters. Discomfort is not a stop sign. It's a signal, a marker that says, you're on the edge of something real. You're standing at the threshold between who you've been and who you're becoming. You don't wait to become worthy of that change. You step toward it. Worthy isn't something handed to you. It's something you earn right in the mess, in the questions, in the uncertainty, in the moments where nothing is guaranteed but you show up anyway. You don't find confidence and then act. You act scared. You act uncertain. And by acting again and again you build confidence. From the inside out. Every time you whisper to yourself, "I can't," your nervous system listens. It doesn't argue. It doesn't ask for proof. It just obeys. It starts wiring itself around that limitation. Your breath tightens. Your expectations shrink. And if you repeat those thoughts enough times, they don't just become beliefs. They become blueprints. Roadmaps you start to follow without even realizing. That's the dangerous thing about doubt. It doesn't scream. It whispers. Maybe. I'm just not built for this. I've never been good at that. It's probably too late for me. It sounds like your voice. It feels like reason. But it's fear disguised and dressed up as practicality. What if, just for a moment, you treated your thoughts not as facts, but as suggestions? What if you challenged them not with panic, but with curiosity? Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Most of us are living under the guidance of thoughts we never chose, never examined, never questioned. They were passed down by teachers, by parents, by culture. Voices that became the narration of your inner world long before you realized you had permission to write your own script. So the next time that inner voice says you're not enough, stop. Don't absorb it. Ask yourself, whose voice is that, really? Is it a tired version of yourself speaking from exhaustion? Is it someone else's doubt, still echoing in your system from years ago? Because the moment you identify the source, you loosen its grip. You are not your thoughts. You are the one observing them. You are the thinker, not the thought. And that changes everything. Asterisk, that means you have power. Power to pause. Power to choose. Power to rewrite. And now that we've seen how fear disguises itself, once you realize you are not your thoughts, but the one who chooses them, you begin to reclaim your power. You don't need to control every thought that crosses your mind. That's not the goal. The real power, it lies in deciding which thoughts get to stay, which ones you'll nourish, which ones you'll build your life around. Your mind is a space, a sacred one. And like any space you live in, it collects clutter, self-doubt, fear, shame. They stack up slowly, silently, especially when you're not paying attention. But just like a messy room, you can clean it. You can bring order to the chaos mentally, emotionally, by choosing with intention, by replacing noise with clarity, by trading assumptions for curiosity, by shifting judgment into understanding. Your strength begins the moment you stop being just an echo and start being the editor, the author, the one who writes the script. Instead of just reading from the one you were handed, think about it. You scroll, you stare, you see them winning, glowing, celebrating milestones in polished, filtered moments. And before you even realize it, something inside you shrinks. Not physically, but emotionally. Internally, you start comparing their triumphs to your doubts, their milestones to your mess, their highlight reel to your behind the scenes. And suddenly, You feel like you're falling behind in a race you didn't even realize you were running. But here's the truth. Comparison is a thief. It doesn't just steal your joy. It takes your focus. It drains your gratitude. It halts your momentum and trades it all for anxiety, envy, and a quiet ache that whispers not enough. And the cruelest part, most of it isn't even real. You're comparing your full, raw, human experience to someone else's carefully edited glimpse. It's an unfair fight before it even begins. The Stoics understood this. They knew that the good life had nothing to do with possessions, praise, or public approval, and everything to do with how you lived. Epictetus taught us never to tie our worth to what lies outside our control, especially not the successes of other people. He said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." Yet how often do we hand over our peace just because someone else is ahead of us in a game we didn't even choose? But you're not behind. You're on your path. One with its own rhythm, its own pace, its own lessons. You were never meant to match anyone else's timeline. Aristotle believed that every person has their own purpose, what he called telos, and trying to copy someone else's purpose. It's like planting a tree and expecting it to bloom like a flower. It's not wrong. It's just not you. The only competition that actually matters is with the person you were yesterday. Are you learning? Are you growing? Even just a little? Are you trying? If the answer is yes, then you're not failing. You're evolving. And that kind of progress measured in self-awareness, honesty, and quiet efforts is far more meaningful than any viral moment ever posted online. What you think you need right now might not be motivation. It might not be a new mantra or another pep talk. What you need is memory, a clear, honest remembering of what you've already survived. Because if you could truly look back, really see all the moments you made it through, you'd realize you've been far stronger than you've ever given yourself credit. For those days that cracked you, but didn't break you. Those nights you laid awake, heavy with doubt, and still got up the next day, still got dressed, still carried on when quitting would have been easier. That is your resume, not your job titles, not your stats or follower count. Your proof is your perseverance. Resilience isn't some magical trait reserved for the chosen few. It's a decision, repeated daily. It's the choice to keep going when everything inside says stop. And you whisper back, not yet. Resilience is forged in fatigue, refined under pressure, proven in failure. Plato once said, courage is knowing what not to fear, but maybe real courage is fearing everything and moving forward anyway. You are stronger than you feel. Not because someone told you so, but because you've lived strength over and over when no one else was watching. And now that you've remembered what you're truly made of, after everything you've been through in silence, there's something you need to hear. Your strength didn't disappear. It was just never broadcast. The truest kind of strength. It's rarely shared on social media. It doesn't come wrapped in rewards or arrive with a standing ovation. It doesn't wear medals. It lives behind closed doors. It shows up in those moments, the hardest ones, when you didn't think you'd make it through. But somehow, you did. That's where real confidence is born. Not from speeches, not from applause, but from the quiet, private act of standing back up one more time. After life tried to knock you completely flat, confidence isn't something you build when everything is going smoothly. It's something you earn when things are dark, when no one's watching, when there's no guarantee that standing up again will even change anything. But you do it anyway. Your mind, this internal space, is both a battlefield and a sanctuary. It's where fear can multiply like wildfire, or where clarity can take root and grow like a quiet tree. It's not just where your thoughts live, it's where your future is being built, brick by brick. And more often than not, it's not your actual problems that undo you. It's the way you interpret them. It's the stories your mind tells, the fears it feeds, the assumptions it makes. That's where the spiral begins. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." But what about the unexamined thought? That one sentence you repeat to yourself on autopilot. I'm not ready. They're better than me. This always happens to me. These quiet mantras left unchecked become the very script you live out every day. Not because they're true, but because they're familiar. But here's the shift. You can reclaim the gate. You don't have to let every thought walk in and unpack its baggage. You can become the gatekeeper of your own mind, the one who decides what gets to stay, what gets questioned, and what finally gets rewritten. This begins in stillness. Not necessarily silence, but awareness. creating just enough space between stimulus and response, between what you think and what you believe. Start auditing your beliefs. Not to shame yourself, but to understand yourself. Where did this thought come from? Who handed it to you? Does it reflect truth? Or is it just old programming dressed up as logic? Carl Jung once warned, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. But facing your mind, that's where freedom begins. It's not glamorous, but it's liberating. Clean your mental language. Speak to yourself like someone you're responsible for protecting. Journal not to perform, but to see yourself clearly. Stop writing what you hope is true. Start writing what is, so you can, finally, walk toward what can be. Don't just feed your mind with content. Train it with intention. Practice thinking. Practice noticing. Practice replacing. Because a trained mind doesn't panic when pressure comes. It pauses. It doesn't absorb every opinion. It filters. It doesn't chase control. It seeks clarity. A trained mind won't solve every external problem, but it will protect you from the worst enemy of all, the one that lives in the stories you invent. You've tied your worth to outcomes, the job, the number, the applause. You've treated results like mirrors, hoping they'd reflect back the validation you've been chasing. And when they didn't, you shrank. You assumed that if the result wasn't impressive, you must not be either. But the truth is, outcomes are liars. They don't tell the whole story. They're shaped by timing, by chance, by variables far beyond your control. And if you live by them, you'll die by them. One high will never feel high enough. One failure will feel like a verdict. And so the cycle continues, chasing worth in things that were never designed to define you. The Stoics knew this, long before likes, algorithms, or awards. Marcus Aurelius didn't measure his life by battle victories, or by the praise of the Roman Senate. He measured it by something deeper, whether he lived in alignment with virtue, whether his actions came from integrity, not impulse. They believed power wasn't found in the outcome, but in the process. Epictetus said, "Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens, happen the way it happens. Then you will be happy." That's not passivity. That's peace. You are not your wins. You are not your losses. You are who you are in the face of both. You are the effort, not the echo. The decision, not the result. And detachment. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care deeply, but you're finally free from the need to prove it. You've begun detaching your worth from external results now. Let's go deeper into what it truly means to live from that inner mastery. You don't fall apart just because things didn't go your way. You show up. You give your best. You commit with everything you've got, but you don't let the outcome define you. That's not apathy. That's mastery. You can pour your heart into something and still be at peace with letting go of how it turns out. That's the kind of strength most people never see. The kind that doesn't shake in the face of change. Because it's anchored in something deeper. Inner stability. We've been sold the myth that transformation arrives like a lightning bolt, that it explodes in some grand, cinematic scene where everything shifts and the music swells. But real growth doesn't work that way. Change doesn't usually roar. It whispers. It comes through 100 small, honest choices. It's not about leaping 5 steps ahead. It's about simply taking the next step. The one right in front of you, even if it's shaky, even if it's quiet, even if it scares you. True courage isn't always heroic. It's not always a bold confrontation or a speech that stirs a crowd. Sometimes, courage is whispering no when every part of you wants to say yes just to be accepted. Sometimes, it's writing one real sentence when self-doubt begs you to delete it. Sometimes, it's nothing more than placing your feet on the floor and choosing to face the day when all you want is to disappear. Plato once wrote, "The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself." But that kind of victory doesn't arrive in one dramatic burst. It comes through repetition in the small, silent decisions to act in truth, even when fear is screaming louder. You don't build a new identity overnight. You build it brick by brick, by showing up just a little stronger than the day before. And each time you do, something subtle but powerful shifts inside. You begin to see yourself differently, not as the one who always doubts, but as the one who moves forward anyway. And that moment, when your self-image begins to shift, that's the pivot. That's when everything starts to change. Because identity drives action, and action, in return, reinforces identity. It becomes a loop you control. So, who are you when no one is watching? When there's no reward waiting on the other side? No praise, no performance, Just you, your values, and the silence that surrounds them. That's where success is built, not under lights, but in shadows. Not when you're performing, but when you're simply living moment by moment, with quiet integrity. It's easy to act strong when the crowd is watching. It's easy to speak well when applause is waiting. But transformation, it's forged in the private choices, when you do the right thing, even if no one will ever know. Not because someone might see you, but because you see you. You know, and that knowing becomes your compass. Socrates once said, "The soul is dyed the color of its thoughts, but perhaps it's also dyed by its habits." The things you do repeatedly, when there's nothing to gain. That's what forges the inner architecture of your life. You don't build trust in yourself by talking big. You build it through consistency. In the dark, by keeping promises made in private, by staying loyal to your values when no one else is checking. That kind of loyalty, that's where unshakable self-respect is born. And when you learn to show up without needing a witness, you stop performing. You stop proving. You just are. And in that place, even the loudest criticism starts to sound like background noise. Powerless, temporary, irrelevant. So stop shrinking. Stop hiding the parts of you that were never meant to be silenced. Stop apologizing for your ambition, for wanting more, for reaching further, for standing fully in your truth. Ambition is not arrogance, it's clarity. It's that deep, quiet knowing that you're here to do something meaningful. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that striving made you selfish. That confidence made you threatening. But let's be honest, that was never about you. That was always about their comfort. Real humility. It doesn't ask you to disappear, it asks you to remember who you are, even when the world forgets. When you stop apologizing for your ambition and start standing firmly in your truth, something shifts. You begin living from a place of quiet power. True humility doesn't ask you to dim your light. It asks you to stay grounded. It's not about hiding your talents or shrinking back. It's about offering your gifts with grace, without needing applause, without needing to be the loudest voice in the room. As Socrates said, to find yourself, think for yourself. Because once you do, you realize humility isn't about playing small. It's about stepping forward boldly, calmly, without performing. Courage isn't measured by noise. It's measured by presence. By your willingness to stay aligned with what matters to you most. Even when it's unpopular. Even when it's hard. You don't need a spotlight to prove your significance. You don't need a stage to know your strength. But you do need to stop pretending that your voice doesn't matter, because it does. You weren't made to disappear into the background. You were made to contribute, to build, to speak, to model what integrity looks like, is like, especially in a noisy world. And no, that doesn't mean being aggressive or flashy. T means staying grounded. It means living with purpose. It means standing for your values, not with volume, but with calm conviction. You don't need praise to be powerful. You don't need to be celebrated to be significant. Your worth isn't tied to how many people clap when you walk in. It's measured by how faithfully you show up for what and who you love day after day. Fear isn't the enemy. It never was. What holds you back isn't fear itself. It's how tightly you cling to it. How quickly you believe it, without even asking questions. How silently you let it steer your life without ever checking the map. Fear grows strongest in silence, in the corners you avoid, in the stories you never question. So stop, challenge it, sit with it, talk to it. Ask yourself, what am I really afraid of? Not in some vague, general sense. Be specific. Is it failure? Is it being misunderstood? Is it starting over and having to admit the last path wasn't meant for you? Most of what we fear isn't life-threatening, it's ego-threatening. It's the fear of discomfort, the fear of being seen in a way we can't control. But isn't that exactly where growth lives? Carl Jung once said, where your fear is, there is your task. Fear isn't a stop sign, it's a spotlight. It shows you exactly where you're still living from limitation, not freedom. So if something scares you and excites you at the same time, pay close attention. That's the edge of your potential calling. That's your soul knocking. And if you're never on that edge, if everything always feels easy, familiar, safe, then maybe you're not growing. Growth doesn't come from the absence of fear. It comes from your willingness to move forward, despite it. So stop waiting to feel fearless. That day doesn't come. Instead, learn to walk with fear beside you, not behind you, not above you, but shoulder to shoulder. Let it be a signal, not a sentence. Let it teach you. Don't let it trap you. And when you're walking forward, hand in hand with discomfort, that's where another force kicks in. one that's far more powerful than motivation. Discipline, not punishment, not restriction, not the joyless grind. People often mistake it for no discipline is liberation. It's the quiet strength of structure, the freedom that comes from knowing you can count on yourself, even when things feel messy, even when everything around you is out of control. Discipline is the steady rhythm that keeps you anchored when the world around you is spinning. When you train your mind to focus, when you move your body, even on the days you don't feel like it, when you choose consistency over comfort, you're not limiting your life. You're creating space within it. You're telling your nervous system, we've got this. And that trust, that's peace. That's stability. That's real strength. Motivation is great, sure, but it's a visitor. It comes and goes. Discipline is what stays behind when inspiration disappears. It's what holds you up when energy fades. It's what reminds you that your worth isn't tied to a mood. It's built in the quiet repetition of your choices. As Aristotle wrote, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So make your routines sacred. Not rigid, not perfect, but intentional. Asterisk. Let them be your anchor, your quiet rhythm, your living proof. Because the next time life tests your footing, you'll want something solid beneath you. And on the days when motivation fades and noise creeps back in, you're disciplined. The habits you've kept well speak louder than doubt ever could. When uncertainty clouds your mind, when everything feels foggy, heavy, directionless, when you forget who you are and what you're capable of, it's those simple, sacred routines that will rise to meet you. They'll remind you, I know who I am because I show up for myself, even when it's hard, even when no one's watching. And that, more than anything else, is what discipline truly is. Not a performance, not punishment, but a quiet, unwavering act of self-respect, repeated daily. You've waited long enough to feel ready, haven't you? Held yourself back, waiting for the right moment, the perfect conditions, the flawless mood, the green light from someone else to say, now you can begin. But here's the truth. Readiness isn't a feeling that just shows up at your doorstep. It's not gifted. It's created through action, through courage, through taking one trembling step forward, even when your legs feel like giving out. You're already becoming, not in a grand, cinematic way, not in a transformation the world stops to witness, but quietly, steadily, in the ordinary, often invisible moments, where you chose honesty over ease, patience over reaction, effort over excuse. Those choices no one saw, those victories no one clapped for. Those are the moments shaping you. Those are the ones that matter most. The version of you keep imagining, the one who moves with confidence, with clarity, with grounded inner strength. That version isn't waiting at the end of some distant path. They're already within you, not some ideal to chase, but a truth to uncover. Carl Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. You don't need to become someone else. You need to stop running from who you already are. Because when you're most honest, most still, that version of you is close. So close. They're one aligned choice away. One honest moment. One courageous step in the direction you keep delaying. And when you stop underestimating that, when you stop thinking transformation has to be loud or public or perfect, that's when everything changes. Not because the world shifts, but because you do. You stop waiting for permission. You start walking with purpose. You begin acting like the person you've always had the potential to be. And once that begins, there's no going back. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are becoming single day in ways the world may never see, but your future self will thank you for. So keep going. Even now. Especially now. Because the quiet strength you're building today, it will speak louder than anything you've ever said. And if this voice, this message, spoke to something real inside you, there's another video waiting on the screen right now from Mind of Stoic that will take you even deeper. Let it be your next step. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of Mind of Stoic. This space isn't about perfection. It's about progress, about purpose, and about the kind of quiet power that no one can take away.